August 7th, 2024 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission at the Don B. Griffin Room in Town Hall in Harwich. This is still a hybrid meeting. Participation is possible in the room, online through GoToMeeting, and if you choose to participate online, instructions for accessing are on the agenda published on the Town of Harwich website. So we're going to start Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we start with the agenda, I just would like to announce for anybody who's paying attention that we have 3 vacancies for regular members on the Conservation Commission, and anyone who might be interested, I would suggest you contact Amy and talk to her. You can also go online and get there's a form. What is the name of the form, Amy?
There's a committee, committee vacancy application, and you can find it on the administration website.
Okay. If there are no questions about that, we're going to start with the agenda. The first item is a request for change in plan for 33 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel W1-5, for the relocation of a swimming pool, deck removal, and patio reconstruction. Plan change is for a change to the pool equipment area. So, do we have someone online who's advocating here?
Yes, hi, my name's Rhonda.
Okay,
I'm the landscape designer for the Fox residence.
go ahead.
And so the change is that we were originally going to move the pool equipment from its existing location within the 50-foot buffer outside of the 50, but the pool contractor said that won't work. So we have to leave it where it is in place. It's currently about a 6 by 6 foot concrete pad, and we need to increase the concrete pad to a 6 by 10. We need to allow some extra room around the equipment, so the total area will be about a 10 by 14. So anything that's not concrete outside the 6 by 10 pad will be a permeable gravel or pea gravel of some sort. And we already had a significant amount of native planting put in place to compensate for the other changes that had already been approved.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
So they still overall have a net reduction compared to what's currently on the site. From what they're proposing is still a net reduction in hardscape in the buffer zones. So I would recommend approval of the plan change with no additional conditions.
Okay, Wayne?
I don't have anything, John.
No questions.
I can't see the reference here on these things. Do you see where she's talking about?
Right here.
I see.
Sorry, right here. That's a concrete pad right there.
And
They're
that's-
talking about the area that surrounds it. They want to increase that area.
Okay, I don't have any further comments. Do we have any public comment or discussion? Hearing none. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan change for 33 Dunes Road LLC, 33 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel W1-5.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. So next we have A notice of intent for the Harwich Conservation Trust, Hinckley's Pond, Herring River Headwaters, Jenkins Bog, map 81, parcels G1, G2-1, G2-2, G2-3, and G2-4-1. And for the Warner Bog, map 90, parcel B2 for ecological restoration. Amy?
They've requested a continuance to August 21st, 2024.
Okay. Any comment? Can we have a motion?
I'll move the continuance.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Next, we have a notice of intent for 11 River Bend Road, map 1, parcel G1-9, replacement of an existing wooden bulkhead, the installation of floats with scallop growing nets
There you go.
and dredging the base of the bulkhead to allow for scallop growing nets to remain submerged at low tide. Salt marsh restoration is also proposed in eroded areas.
They've requested a continuance to September 4th so that they can go to the Waterways Committee on August 21st.
I'll move for a continuance.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, 4-0. Next is a notice of intent for 9 Fiddler's Landing, map 6, parcel A1-9 for an elevated hot tub and plantings. This is a continuance from June 20th.
You remember we reviewed this, I guess, early last month. So sort of, I submitted a revised plan, which I know you've reviewed in the spirit of sort of collaboration here. So same hot tub, 8x8 hot tub, 64 square feet, and we've shifted that back, which accomplishes a couple of things. One, we are now outside the 50-foot buffer zone line, and it's also increased our footprint on sort of planting, where I'm about 280 square feet on planting now, adjacent to this area. Rest of the plan sort of remains the same. So again, the effort was made here to, it's not a great location for it, but it's something that I hope you can find tenable here as we have moved that past within the limits, outside of the limits of the 50.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
And just for the minutes, for the person who's going to do the minutes, can you state your name? and
Oh,
title,
Dana
please?
Schock, I'm landscape architect on that project.
Thank you. I have no further questions. They've moved the hot tub outside the 50-foot no disturb zone per your request. They've kept a lot of the native plantings. And then the last thing we talked about was the fertilizer usage, which we will again put on this permit, that they cannot use fertilizers, pesticides, or herbicides. And it's actually pretty much on this whole lot, because even if it's not within the 100-foot buffer, this is all flood zone, which is your jurisdiction. So, yeah, I would recommend approval of the project now.
Okay, comments, Sophia?
Did you, Amy, want to ask about the rows on the list?
Yeah, I did speak with Mr. Schock
Yes, that was
about it.
a mistake on when that was being prepared. I actually had on the original list that I submitted last time, had the correct rows, and somehow it's been corrected. I sent that in to Amy. That was just a clerical error.
Gotcha. I have no questions.
No questions.
None.
I have a question. Is there such a thing as an Arkansas rose?
Probably.
I looked it up, there is.
There is actually.
It looks very similar to the Virginia and
Latin, they
Carolina.
look the same,
Yeah,
Thought I was kidding.
So,
it's true. It shows up.
the other comment you made here, Amy, was about, just,
Oh, confirmation from the owner that they're not gonna be doing those practices with the fertilizers?
I think we should require written confirmation from the owner and the landscaper that they will no longer be applying fertilizers of any sort or pesticides of any sort.
We can put that as a condition.
Other than that, I have no other comments. Any comments from the public? Hearing nothing, can we have a motion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How can we do that? I'm not sure that's,
You're not sure what?
well, I don't, I guess I don't really understand it. I mean, the conditions are as such, which is the order of what to do or not to do. But to ask for confirmation of that, I mean, that's all understood. That's kind of universal. To me, that just seems like it's redundant.
Well, we require plans. We require plans to have statements about what exactly is going to be done. And since we've repeatedly actually asked this particular owner not to apply fertilizers and
Previous owner.
pesticides.
Previous owner.
This particular property, okay. And it certainly happens elsewhere to not apply fertilizers or pesticides, and it's evident on inspection that commitment is not being honored. I think it's important for us to make a bigger deal out of it, to make the point that this isn't a casual request, it's a requirement. And I think that we owe it to the town, to the taxpayers who are paying for sewering to try to mitigate all the extra nutrients in the water, that we owe it to the town to try to ensure the property owners honor the requirements that we place on them. And this is a minor step that I think we should do. Make the point, and landscapers in particular need to have it on their radar and be informed directly rather than through a property owner that they are not to be applying any of these things on property. So I would not withdraw that requirement at all.
Okay. I understand what you said, and I recognize it, and I agree with most of what you said. I think the method is what needs to be looked at, and I think on the whole, the commission needs to view that whole procedure as something that should be education that needs to be passed out through mapping, and arrange public notification of what these zones are and what the requirements are or are not in those zones. To me, that would be an asset, and if that information is available publicly, it could be solicited to any commercial entity that would be involved, as well as any property owners. Just another step of making people aware of what they should or should not do.
All that stuff makes a lot of sense to me. I just don't see why it means we shouldn't be.
I have a quick
making-
question, just to, and I'm all for that. I'm not a fertilizer guy. What happens to everybody else?
Well, people have.
I guess, does everyone, we all know what that street looks like with the houses and the properties. So I'm wondering if one, and I'm not telling you not to do this, I'm fine with that language, if that's inserted. How do we, as collectively, this property owners, just because they're in front of your board right now, are being singled out, and we want this in writing, and everyone else down the row is, I'm asking you what the strategy would be to,
Well, what we've done in the past, what we have been doing as a regular practice is writing into the orders of conditions that in our jurisdictional areas, which are limited to generally 100 feet from wetland resource or 200 feet, or in flood zones, or 200 feet from
Yeah.
a riverine environment, requiring them not to apply fertilizers.
I get that, but absent them doing work that would require an order of conditions, they're
Well,
just,
It would have to be a town bylaw,
yeah. I
which
mean,
the
that's what I'm
town has
wondering, how we
considered.
effectively, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Well, we're doing what we can do. and
Right.
Yeah.
We should be doing everything that we can do
Yeah.
to prevent the continued application of fertilizers in these properties, at least within our jurisdictional area. And that includes educating the people who make a business out of applying these things. And I agree with Mark, there needs to be more general education. That's not really the topic of our conversation today. It's what are we gonna tell these property owners they can do on their property? And I think we need to make a stronger point than we've been making in the past, because it's very clear that our requirements get ignored very frequently, and so we need to inform the landscaper and landscapers in general. This is what we can do now, today, to address the problem. And the town, I agree, should be doing more education, and that may be up to the Conservation Commission, but that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about, whether we're gonna approve this project and what conditions we're gonna place on the project. So I'm strongly in favor of requiring a letter from the landscaper and from the property owner that states that they will no longer be putting any chemicals such as fertilizers or herbicides and other pesticides on anything on that property, since that entire property is within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
I have a question. Who's gonna hold the landscape companies accountable? Are we gonna have lawn police eventually, or what?
Well, that was my
Well,
question too.
So, this is a philosophical discussion, I'm sorry. You're asking that question, and there are plenty of things, there aren't police on the streets 24/7 on Route 6 enforcing the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and people regularly go over 55 miles an hour on Route 6. And that's not a reason for not having a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit on Route 6. Just like it's not a reason, the fact that people sometimes ignore what we tell them they need to do, that's not a reason for us to not tell them not to do that. And, excuse me, I'm going off. Please go ahead. I think I interrupted you as well, Mark, and I apologize.
Quite all right.
I think it's a good discussion to have, and I have some information from you for what the town is doing, but can we do that at the end of the meeting under discussion, so we can go through some hearings?
Yeah.
But I completely agree, and that the question of policing is important, but if we can talk about it towards the end of the meeting, that might be best.
Fine.
So
Okay.
Fine.
what are we gonna do about this
Someone-
order of conditions?
Someone needs, well, it's not.
Can we ask for that, or
They said they're amenable to it, so,
Put it in a
yes.
motion,
sounds
so
good?
you could make a motion.
I can't do it yet.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan for 9 Fiddler's Landing, map 6, parcel A1-9. The order conditions being that no fertilizer, herbicides, or pesticides be used on the entire property. And unless I don't know if you guys want to put in the thing about a letter, I'm not going to do that one.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, discussion. I would like to amend the motion to add the requirement that letter be required from the property owner and from the landscaper stating that they are not applying fertilizer and pesticide.
Second.
Okay, so we need to vote on the amendment,
Mhm.
unless you're willing to accept the amendment as it is.
No, I don't think we should get a letter from landscapers. It's kind of redundant, nobody's gonna pay attention to it. Well, that's discussion for later, but,
In this case, if they're willing to,
well, it'd be a Mr. Shock.
Well, I want to try and move this project forward. I haven't discussed this in any depth with her yet, so, as far as giving a formal signed letter saying you won't, but, how I'll present that is this is how, if you want, if that hot tub's important to you, this is what you're gonna need to do. Then this is your decision. So, I agree with you, Wayne, like, the whole thing about, you know, the landscaper's gonna sign. So, but I understand what your intent is, and so that's sort of how I have to present this, and that's how I will. My focus tonight was, you know, this is obviously a huge issue, that's why we're getting well beyond the scope of work, a place in the hot tub there. Like, this is a big issue.
Okay, so I would, we spent enough time on this.
Yeah.
I'd like to just vote on the amendment, and then we'll move on based on the vote. So, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Okay, so
The original motion.
we're back to the original motion. So let's vote on the original motion. All those in favor of Wayne's motion?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 4-0.
All set?
Okay?
We'll do the conditions next time, and
Okay.
you'll have them
All right,
soon.
okay, it's okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have a notice of intent for 35 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel F1-0 for a permanent dock installation. This is a continuance from June 20.
Oh, yeah. I hope everybody's summer has been going along pretty good. My name is Wayne Tavares. I'm also a landscape architect, professional wetland scientist. I came before you last month, and we had some issues with the non-water dependent area, and I hadn't seen waterways yet. So since then, I've seen waterways. They've signed the project off. I had some discussions with John Rendon, the harbor master, and he made some recommendations shortening the dock. All of this is reflected in the water-dependent portion, which is the dock. It's 80 feet long, that's the maximum length allowed. It requires dredging because of the contours underneath, which near harbor. Construction was fine, everything was fine, and the meeting went along really well. The fellow who runs the shellfish hatchery, I guess it's on Richmond Harbor, has suggested that due to the dredging that the owner gets charged to reseed the area for 3 years. So that was one of the other conditions depending on the water dependent part of this project. The non-water dependent project, we wanted to remove the invasive species of knotweed and porcelain berry, and also install a perch or a deck adjacent to the stairway that goes down to the dock. So the stairway was also to be replaced. We're thinking, since it's in kind, it's its own mitigation. The perch, however, is extra coverage. It's not really on the coastal bank. That came up last time. The bulkhead intercedes with the coastal bank. So actually, it sits above the coastal bank. And its area is being tripled in size with mitigation. One of the commissioners mentioned that removal of invasive species is not significant enough, or it's not really mitigation. So we've added, sweetened the pie, I guess it is, and removed 662, I think it is, or 682 square feet of lawn area, and dedicated that to additional mitigation plants. So we went from 144 plants to 174 plants. One of the commissioners, one of the things that came up, there was about 4 or 5 species that Amy and I agreed to remove from the list, and then we added some others that she suggested. So the list has been reconfigured. The quantities are put in: botanical name, common name, size, spacing, and area of coverage. So again, we went from 144 plants to 174 plants, and included the removal of some lawn, which we hope satisfies the commission to allow this perch to exist. Other than that, we're using the cut and drip method, removal. 682 square feet, I think I said it right. Grouping, how these were to be grouped. To design something in place, every one of these 174 plants I found is not really the way to do things. It's better to add notes, so we put notes in here that all these plants would be assigned locations by the landscape architect and placed in a methods from height to lowness, from bottom of slope to top of slope. So we put examples of how these were to be grouped in this area. And that's how we would do this. We would take a number of plants. I usually use a paint gun, or if the plants are available, I actually place them where they're going to go. They're in groups of 3s, 5s, or 7s. And that's the way it's commonly done. So the notes have been added also to the plan. I think that's about it. Covers most of what we've done or talked about. So I'm anxious to hear from the board, their reaction.
Amy?
Thank you. I have a few questions and comments. So, I guess let's deal with the land side first. So, it was a little confusing that the drawing that you did was just a depiction of what it kind of would be, because typically when we see something like that with plants on it, it's all the plants or just letters or something like that. So I was a little confused because obviously your plant list has a lot more plants on it than your sketch depicts. So I don't have a problem with that now that I understand it. As long as we can make that clear in the orders of conditions that the number of plants needs to equal those number of
Right.
plants, and it has to be, like you said, grouped and spaced appropriately. Because if somebody was just to look at the diagram, the picture, it looks like you might be doing far less than you actually are. So I'm okay with that now that I understand it. Can you tell me a little bit, you have a fiber roll addition at the toe of your slope here. I'm not opposed to that, or recommending it. What I'm a little concerned about is that it's only one 16-inch roll and with nothing buried. Usually what we see is like 1 or 2 buried to have more of a toe. And then have the one above kind of staked through that, just to provide a little bit more reinforcement. I'm just concerned about erosion underneath the bottom. Just if you could clarify.
I'm an old-fashioned Cape Codder. In the old days, we would sit a backhoe, an excavator, on the top of the slope. We'd rip the whole, all this knotweed out, porcelain berry, take it out of there, put it in trucks, and remove it.
Yeah.
In which case, we'd have an erosion situation. We'd come in with good loam and replace it all. Well, I don't think putting an excavator on coastal bank above Witchmere Harbor is going to work. So, the point is, we've
Well, on
got
top,
this-
maybe, on top. In the grass area,
I'll
we've done it
I'll throw it
before.
out there. I'll throw it out there.
Yeah.
However, the cut and drip method has been recommended for years, so that's what we're sort of stuck with. And back to your point,
Yep.
I've used they come in 12 or 16 or 20.
Right.
So you can suggest to us that we use 120. It's half buried, I always half bury.
Okay.
So they're cabled, they're also cabled, they're not just staked, we cabled them in. And they're cabled 3 to a section, they're 10 feet long, and they're cabled. Sorry, I did not show a cross-section of them. But that's how we put them in, they don't move. I just finished one in Plymouth that had one, it's right on Plymouth Harbor, and it's right in the teeth of
Okay.
the nor'easter that we get. So they generally work, but this is a slope. There we use stone mulch, actually. Here, it's, we're not gonna use any
Right.
mulch. I'm not gonna suggest any mulch at all. The point is we want plants that are native. We want plants that are grouped, so they look natural. We want diversity. We have either 9 or 10 plants. I can't count that quickly
Yeah.
in here, so we have diversity. We're trying to make up for a small area of extra coverage that's adjacent, so that it gives these people a perch to look at. And that's the whole reason we're doing this, as well as the owner is a good steward. We don't bring these projects lightly. We bring them so that it's copious. It covers a lot of this project, and it also, it's water dependent. In the very old days, Conservation Commissions would tell us to come in with 2 notices of intent, one for water-dependent projects, and same projects, but non-water dependent. And luckily, all the towns have converted over and say, let's keep it simple. So, we've satisfied waterways, they've provided some advice as far as this project is concerned, and now we're talking about the non-water dependent portion, which is excellent. Oh, I also should say that we also carried this further down to the property line.
Mm-hmm.
What I did is, I stopped at the knotweed, but there's Rosa rugosa
Yep.
that continues down here. So we've also extended
Mhm.
the area of planting. So forgive me, I forgot that. So at the
That's a good
same
thing.
time, we're trying to hold the toe of the slope. It's buried, we can go to 20 inches if you wish and put it in, but it's half buried, it's cabled, it will not move. It will deteriorate where it is
Yep.
with time. Slope is planted, grass is removed. I don't know what else I can tell you. Thank you.
So because you're using the cut and wipe method, you don't anticipate needing to blanket the slope in between, because there'll be a time after you've treated and then a time, it'll be a little while until you can plant and have them be viable. And, so you don't think you'll need any type of matting on the slope, because there'll still be root mass from the, knotweed in the banking? Is that what you're thinking, or are you thinking of matting the slope?
We're suggesting a 3-year period before we plant, or within the 3-year period, so that we go 3 years, we see how this reacts, okay? We're removing it slowly, and if we see erosion, then we would plant it, and we would use this, it's a blanket, we're basically using a blanket, and we're poking holes in the blanket for the good plants to plant. Once we know we've beaten this polygonum. So, once we've beaten it to a point that's, say, 90%, then we would suggest we plant it, and we would use a blanket or a erosion fabric is rather what I
Yep.
call it. And then we'd poke holes in it, and we'd plant these plants so that they grow and not the knotweed. And we have to beat the knotweed to a certain point, that's my experience. Between honeysuckle and knotweed, I don't know which one is worse to get rid of permanently.
Knotweed, in my, I think. But I'm a little, I haven't, knotweed is very aggressive and it takes a while to beat back. I'm a little hesitant about leaving a slope bare of plants for 3 years. We'd probably require a biannual monitoring report to say where we're at.
That's fine.
I would hope that after 2 or 3 growing seasons, you can at least start the plantings.
Sure.
I think, and I'll defer to your judgment of doing this over a number of years, the 16-inch roll, half buried, just to hold the toe of the slope. You may need, from my experience here in Harwich, you may need, I don't know how substantial your stakes would be in there. We get ice in Witchmere Harbor, so I've seen things get ripped out, so you may want to have longer stakes, or screws is what we've seen to hold rolls rather than just stakes.
If you want to see a detail of that, I can show you. It's cabled in, so it's cabled then staked.
Yeah, okay. That would be good for the record afterwards. That would be great. Now getting to the dock. So I measured your plan a few times, from mean high water to the edge of your pile. Maybe I shouldn't have counted the edge of the pile, maybe it should be the edge of the float. I did get 82 and a half.
Okay, yeah, you said 82.4 or something like that, yeah.
So
Is that the
80,
mean-
80 is I did it from mean high,
Okay,
80 feet from mean high water to the outer extent. I'm still from the outer edge of that pile, which is permanent, 82 and a half.
and then on the cross-section, so we can look at that, went from station, behind water, is 54 on the cross-section, and then at the very end of the float, it's 134. So 134 less 54 is,
Is it
this might be a graphic thing.
Okay.
Amy. We
I
don't
was
intend-
concerned, we typically do get a plan that is stamped by an engineer or surveyor at the time of application. I see you have a space for Keith Fernandez to do it, but it's not checked. It would need to be at 80 feet, otherwise you'd need to be asking for a variance.
Yeah, no. We went through that with water.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that. And you've already, your original plan was stamped by Keith,
Okay,
okay? And when
Yep.
we settle on this plan,
okay,
we'll get that
Fresh
same
set.
plan stamped also by Keith.
sounds good. And then you say area of dredging equal, and you've also said in certain areas approximately 100 yards, cubic yards, for dredging. Locally, to conservation, whether it's 99 or 101, it's not a huge difference, but if you are 100 cubic yards, and this is why I suggest if you can get to -3, because that's what we do care about, is getting to a -3 at mean low water, at 99 cubic yards, that would be helpful, because this is gonna trigger, 100 cubic yards is gonna trigger a 401 water quality certification, unless you wanna go through that.
What happened here is when you, before a commission, there's times that you know you gotta go along. So I personally put in the pipe that's out there. Then I moved the pipe because of a suggestion by John, keeping the length where it is. When I walked out there, as opposed to the contours that appear on the plan, I was at 4.5 feet. I don't think you need any dredging at all. However, I took it as a plus that Waterways was suggesting to us that they dredge. To me, it appeared that dredging is needed in all of the docks, practically. Am I saying that right? In Witchmere Harbor, almost all of them get dredged or have a dredging.
Most of them, yeah.
So I thought it was better for my client to have the ability to dredge. The calculations actually came out to 73 cubic yards, but I went for the whole enchilada of saying 100 or a limit of 100. And I'm strongly saying that, but the actual calculations came out to way less than that. And actually, I walked out there at low tide. I know the elevations at each one of those stations. And when I could practically bang the pipe in because of the elevation. I had to cut the pipe in half, put a collar on it, bang it into the ground, and add a section. I glued a section on top of that to show the difference between high tide and low tide. And when I did that, I was ending up to here. I'm not a tall guy, but that's 4.5 feet, maybe almost 5. So that's where I was at the proper place. When I walk in to get the inner portion, I was certainly at 3 feet, and that's what your criteria is. So I could have argued with Waterways and said, no dredging is allowed, but I went along with them, and I think that's their criteria to help Witchmere Harbor with their seeding program. So it's a small harbor. It does, I guess it flushes okay, I'm sorry. And then they want to seed all these areas. So I just went along with flow. But personally, it's a lot less than 100 cubic yards.
So I think we need to know what is the amount that, even though it says you may dredge up to 99 cubic yards, or to get to a depth of 3 feet, to know the amount that needs to be dredged is helpful. That way a dredge operator, if they're looking at a plan, because we're not gonna be out on the dredge, and if they see, oh, I can dredge up to 100 cubic yards, there could be some misunderstanding,
Sure,
and you
sure.
could get too much of an overdredge.
Okay. It's on the cross-section as far as what we're taking out. So I did the
Yeah.
area, and I did the contours, and it did come out to something like 73, but so I owe you calculations on that.
If that would be really good
And a
to know,
cross-section of the core fiber roll.
please,
Cable.
please.
Okay, sure.
So this is further on the dock, this is an existing licensed dock. So, and it is our requirement, and it's our new requirement, instead of 2.5, to get to 3 feet of depth. So I do feel that because it's an existing licensed dock, that, in a way, my recommendation is to allow for the dredging, because it pre-existed our regulations and it is licensed. That being said, the shellfish survey, I know John Lowell is a very good shellfish surveyor. There's not a plan, typically what we see is a plan that shows the transects on the plan, so we can relate his spreadsheet to a plan. I don't know if under these I'm not gonna say, I'll let the commission decide if they want that or not. Given that it's an existing licensed permitted dock, I don't think I'm gonna make a recommendation that it's needed, but going forward, we typically like to see that so we can see where things were sampled from. Even though he detailed it in a written narrative, usually we get an overlay on the site plan of where the transects lie.
But has John provided that before to you?
John Lowell, I don't think he has, I think he has provided what he has provided probably to you, but other engineering companies for other projects have overlaid it onto their plans. I could show you an example of it.
Yeah, if you would.
Yep.
And let me just say that, it's the engineer
Right,
or surveyor that has done the overlay, not John. John has provided where those transects
I don't
are.
know positively, but I'm assuming,
Okay.
so,
Stephanie sent me about 5 different
okay.
issues of which you're looking at too, and there's some I couldn't figure out, so I
Yeah.
don't know if they did that, so forgive me for that.
That's okay. I guess there's no surprise that this is a shellfish area. And that's what they found. They found a mixed class of shellfish kind of all scattered throughout here. There's no surprise, and that's historically been an area of Witchmere Harbor where we have found shellfish in fair abundance. So had you not had a dock, had this been a brand-new application for a new dock, it'd be much more difficult to get, given this high shellfish habitat quality. The seeding program, the owners can do the seeding themselves. It is a requirement usually for dredging and a dock to do 3 years of seeding at 30 bushels a year of mixed class juveniles. The owners can take that onto themselves. The way we find better compliance is we created a shellfish mitigation fund, which is what Don was telling you about, where myself or Don Yanuzzi, the shellfish constable, used that to either purchase or grow out shellfish and then seed not just this area, but the entire harbor, and that way we know it gets done, because we were having problems with getting people to comply with that condition. So you don't have to do it, it is totally up to the owners. We like to think it makes it easier on them, and actually they get a better rate than they're gonna get out there doing it privately. So yeah, I just really love to see the plantings hopefully start, at least some of the plantings be able to start. I know we can't predict when we're gonna get to a point where we can do that. With the knotweed eradication, 80 to 90% eradication is kind of usually where we start. So I'd recommend monitoring plans for that. I'd love a couple of additional information from you, just kind of clarifying information, the role, as well as the definite dredge amount.
Calculation.
Yep. And I guess lastly, the platform at the top of the coastal bank, I kind of hemmed and hawed on it because it is nice to get rid of additional lawn there, but it is well, within the 50-foot buffer. And It is a no disturb zone, and it's supposed to be a hardship to get a new structure there. I just don't see it as a demonstrated hardship for a platform there, so it's up to the commission. I can't recommend that component of the project, but I could recommend the others.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. So, Commissioners, Wayne,
I think Amy's covered it all. I can't think of anything else that needs to be dealt with.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I would agree.
Sophia.
Yeah, I agree with Amy's, whatever. I think for consistency's sake, I feel the same way about the deck. If the last project, a hot tub is not a hardship, then a deck is not either. And for me, that's, I feel like that's a good hill to die on. And yeah, no other questions?
I think I agree with what Sophia just said. You've covered it all. I have one question, which is, I have a question about whether this is a replacement or not. And aside from what we might decide, as far as the state is concerned and Chapter 91, it's a different dock in a different place. Is
They
that
do
a-
have to yes, so they'll have to amend, hopefully amend, not reapply totally, amend their Chapter 91 license.
That's the way I understand it.
I see.
I guess what I meant was there's a permitted licensed dock has been allowed on this property. I should have said that
So
way.
there still are open questions here, right? I mean, what is your thought about whether should be acting on this evening?
I think Mr. Tavares has been good in getting us sort of what we've asked for, and I think there was a little confusion about, what goes to waterways and what comes here. But I don't have any doubt that he's gonna provide us with the things that we've asked for this evening in a quick fashion. Stamped plans, cross-section of the choir logs with information on the anchoring. What was the third thing? I have it written.
Was the calculation?
The calculation for the dredging, and I think the rest we can make very clear in the orders of conditions. Unless there was something else you in particular wanted to see, I think we could move on this tonight.
No question. The Chapter 91 license amendment, does that have to be done before,
After us.
after?
They require that they go to us first,
Okay.
and then they get our permit.
Okay.
We've amended these before, and they've said you move it 1 foot to the right, to the left, lengthwise, shorten, it's an amendment. And so, as long as it's pre-licensed, not a problem.
Yeah.
If it's new, of course, that's the footprint that's presented. I just wanted to add one more thing, because if you vote tonight, one of my client's big issues here, we talked about water dependent, was also to get this perch. So we've always thought it was a trade-off of being good stewards, try to remove invasive species, do this project as a trade-off. And we've sweetened the pie a little bit, removing some grass and so forth. But it is tit for tat. In other words, the perch and the invasive species removal is on a scale. Without the perch, I'm not sure that the owner would want to do the invasive species removal. That's the trade-off. Or the grass, the lawn removal, they just leave it as is. And we talk about just the water-dependent portion of this. So we're looking to be good stewards to follow through with this whole thing. There's no building in the 50-foot zone. I've heard that, there's a lot of towns that allow that, but they allow it with a waiver. It's above, perch is above mean high water. et cetera. It's good construction. It's adjacent to another structure. The other structure is needed to get you down to the waterway. So this is in Askins, we're in Askins of that. But there is a certain trade-off that I've talked to the owner. So please consider that, as the owner does want to be a good steward. So we can keep this as a water-dependent project only, or hopefully we can get this small perch and a lot of good work of invasive species removal as the trade-off. So I don't want to put the board's feet to the fire. I'm just telling what I know.
Amy?
What I realized was, is this new perch, it's really hard to tell on this plan, but where your top of bank is. It says top of, if you could show me, because I see it on here,
Okay. One of the other reasons we,
but I'm not sure how it carries over here.
no, top of bank is here, and then it comes down, and then
No,
it
top
hits.
of bank is over here.
I'm sorry, top of bank comes down here.
Where does it hit over here?
And then it hits
Goes
here,
down.
and then it goes right down to the bulkhead.
Oh,
And
okay.
we're on the bulkhead.
I was
So-
trying to get you that it was actually on the bank and you didn't actually need a variance from the 50. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, so it's not on the bank.
No, but it's in the 0 to 50, which is actually more strongly regulated, weirdly enough, in Harwich.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. Then there's no other option to move it farther back and for them to still have a nice view.
30 feet back doesn't make sense, because that's what you would ask. You would ask it to go the limit of that.
I
Why don't I prove that out? Let me prove out that coastal bank location, okay? And prove it out, show the bulkhead as a cross-section and where mean high water hits that area to make sure it's either above, which that's my first taking, but I didn't prove it out. I'd rather prove it out, so I owe you about 3 or 4 things. And I prefer you not to vote tonight,
okay?
to continue, but think about, there's a lot of things on the table, a lot of moving parts on this
Mhm.
project. So we're trying to do it right. The owner's in a position to obviously do all these things,
Mm-hmm.
or none of them. So, and the dock, just the last thing, here's the old position of the dock, I left it there, so we've
Yeah.
improved it for navigation purposes and shortened it, so for 2 reasons. So that takes, some of that off the table as a good approach. We can also beef up this area that's kind of vacant with Rosa Rugosa down here. I don't mind doing that either. It's just that this small area, we'd like to trade off to this bigger area. And I'll prove out those, I owe you 3 or 4 things. Amy.
Just to clarify, if it's okay, the 600 square feet of extra lawn removal, that's tied to the new perch. The rest of the invasive species removal,
Technically, it doesn't have to do for the new dock, because it's, unless the new, he would have to, if the new dock, if the new one is more square footage than existing permitted, then you still need to mitigate for new structure, and we can talk about that if we're gonna continue. So I'm not sure what the square footage of your current or permitted structure is versus the new one.
Okay. It's less, I can tell you
yeah,
that.
so
I can't tell you how much.
If he's less, then technically has to do the shellfish and that's it.
Yep.
I mean, if it would, let's have a conversation, but, yeah. So the next meeting is August 21st,
I am on vacation.
about September 4th.
September 4th is good. That's fine.
Okay, so I would like to see a stamped engineered plan specifically addressing the dredge amount. I'd like to see that on the stamped plan with the engineers when you come back in next month.
Okay.
And the other thing is, are there any public comments here before we go ahead? Here, anybody have anything to say on this? I don't think so. So, would someone like to move?
I'll make a motion, we continue the plan for 35 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel F1-0.
Second.
So just, we need to include the date in the motion. We're don't we, or do we not need to include?
Did you
the
say
date?
September 4th?
No, I did not.
September 4th. then.
September 4th, then.
Okay. So, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We would need any new materials at least a week prior, but maybe tomorrow, the next couple of days, you and I can have a conversation.
Yeah, I want to make sure that, I think now we're up to about 4 different points that we have to provide.
Okay.
Okay, and,
I should be a little bit easier to get a hold of in the next few days. It was a little crazy for a while.
a week before is,
I'll get it for you. Hold on.
August 28th?
Should be, yep.
Yeah, I'll be back just before that. I'll start working on this before.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have a request for determination of applicability for 1 Driftwood Terrace, map 4, parcel B7-2 for a home addition.
Good evening, Tris Weller from Weller and Associates, representing the Clares. They're proposing to build a 75 square foot addition at the entryway of their house, basically to enlarge the foyer and the entryway into the house. Approximately 5 feet of the addition is within the 100-foot buffer. The entire addition is within the 200-foot riparian zone of the Rivers Act. We have proposed a 150 square foot mitigation area down by the top of the bank to do some plantings. I think I read Amy's recommendations, and we're just gonna allow you to coordinate with the contractor as far as what type of plants to go in there and the shape of it. We just showed a rectangle to show that we had the area. I'm not an artist. I think in angles and squares, so that's why it gets shown, but out in the field, they'll make it look pretty.
Are you planning on doing the work, fall, winter?
I believe they want to get, on the
Sure.
addition, started right away.
Okay.
The mitigation can probably happen in the spring.
Fall or spring? I mean, it could happen this.
It could,
Fall is a decent planting time.
Yep.
As well. So definitely, I would say we would put a condition no later than May 1
Sure.
of 2025, probably.
Because the contractor on the project doing the construction on the addition is also a landscaping
Oh,
company.
okay, good,
So
that's
they'll
good.
do it all.
Okay. My only, so it's a 75 square foot addition. Portion is within the 100-foot buffer to the top of the coastal bank, and the rest is in the 1 to 200 foot outer riparian, also in the AE flood zone. The addition is at the entryway to the dwelling. The majority of the dwelling, if you haven't been out there, is seaward of this. I had some suggestions on plantings, as long as you're willing to work, they're willing to work with me on the types. And then, you know, doing a start work for that, we would kind of meet out on site and plot it out exactly. And for such, I normally wouldn't do that, but for such a tiny area, I don't mind. And the only, so I'd recommend a approval with a -2 and 3 determination, meaning that work takes place both in and in the buffer zone or resource area, but won't have a negative impact, with the condition of they're already in the lower lawn area, not fertilizing or doing anything. But we do require, as you've heard earlier this evening, the no fertilizers, no pesticides within our jurisdiction. But I will say it was, though some of it's being done on top of the wall, it was
Yeah,
at
below the
least
wall, down
nice
by
to
the wall,
see
yeah.
that below the wall, they're not. So if they can just expand that a little, and I can always talk to them about planting so that it doesn't look like sparse and bare.
Sure.
But with that, I would recommend the approval with a -2 and 3.
Okay, Sophia.
As long as Amy sees the plant list and the layout, I have no
It's tiny, 150 square feet. Easy.
I have no questions.
No question.
I have no questions. Go ahead.
I'll move for approval, as stated very eloquently by Amy a few minutes ago.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
Thank you.
Start, these are, well, let's hold them till the end.
So next, we have a request for determination of applicability for 61 Lovers Lane, map 41, parcel M1-2, for deck extension.
Yes, how you doing? My name's Kevin Manise, local contractor. This is Kevin Cargane, the homeowner, and he's got an existing 10-by-10 deck on the back of his house.
Have a seat.
Oh, all right. Been sitting for a while, getting cramped. But anyways, thank you. We're looking to do a 10-by-8 extension of the deck to the back of the house with the staircase going down. And he's prepared to lose the back buffer, which is on that plan. I think I got it highlighted, 180 feet by 2 feet, or whatever more depth we may need just to equal the double square footage.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Hopefully we won't keep you sitting too long. So with this, I can recommend approval, and the specific plants, and I can put this in the permit, that I would recommend are some of the lower varieties, the inkberry holly in particular, and, or just, yeah, the inkberry and probably the clethra, just because the other ones are much bigger plants usually, and you probably, I would just think, would want to transition to your grass area. I can put that in the approval, but I'm in favor of it as, with a -2. -2, is that what I
So
said?
you got 3 on you. Yeah.
3, because it's only buffer zone here. And again, with the condition that actually went with the condition of the house, the no fertilizers and pesticides. We try to do plants that really don't need that stuff too.
No comment from me.
Either.
I agree with Amy, as long as she's on board. I think the 2 feet is not gonna buy you much
Yeah.
plant space, so for it to be like actually functional, I would recommend doing just like maybe a just shorter part with a little more girth.
Okay.
But other than
Whatever you
that,
recommend then.
Well, the plants, I mean, you put 2 feet, the plants, when you get them, are gonna be 2 feet, but they're gonna expand, and we talked about that yesterday, they're not gonna get pruned, so in reality, it's gonna be bigger. Yeah.
Okay, I have no comments. Anyone in the room or online? Hearing none.
I'll make a motion that we approve a -3 determination for 61 Lovers Lane, map 41, parcel M1-2.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
So now we have request for an extension permit for an order of conditions for 1 Belmont Road, map 1, parcel C1-1 for beach cleaning.
Good evening. My name is Jay Donovan, and I'm the property manager of the Belmonts. Thank you for taking this up. We are looking to extend our order of conditions. We've been completely compliant with the previous order of conditions over the last 3 years. All we do is rake. There's no removal. And I think you'll see in your packet, there's also a letter from Audubon showing how closely we work with the Audubon Society as we have nesting type of plovers on the beach. And that's pretty much all I've got.
I'd recommend giving them a 3-year extension. They've had an extension prior, but our beach cleaning rules and regulations haven't changed, and they've been they've been good about following the orders of conditions that they have. The Belmont has a fairly unique situation in that they're not losing sand, really, they're mostly accumulating. And what they kind of do is mostly just kind of rake in material and any seaweed and whatnot, rather than pick it up and remove it. They kind of just rough things up together and leave it for the most part, so. And they have been working with Audubon. I get reports from Audubon on all of our private beach associations and owners, and there's never any issues with cooperation from the Belmont. So I'd recommend a 3-year extension for them.
Okay. Wayne,
Nothing.
Nothing?
No questions.
no questions, no comments? Anything from anybody else? Hearing none.
I'll move that we approve the extension permit for order of conditions for 1 Belmont Road, map 1, parcel C1-1, SE 32-2294.
Second?
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Amy and board members, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have some requests for certificates of compliance, starting with 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2-0, or new seasonal decks, storage lockers, and mitigation planting areas.
So, I can speak to this, but I do think John Bologna of Tie and Bond is online as well. My quick recommendation is a certificate of compliance for them. Their decking location and size is now in compliance, and the mitigation planting areas have been established. So I would recommend a cert. And John, if you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, nothing. We've gone back and forth on this several times, as the board may recall. The area may have gotten, I think they built a little larger than was originally approved. So essentially they peeled it back to what was the original permit. So we provided a new as-built plan, and the areas are all shown on that plan, as well as the mitigation that was provided.
Okay,
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
I have nothing to add either, so. I'll move that we approve the certificate of compliance for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2-0, for a new seasonal deck, storage lockers, and mitigation planting areas.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is a request for certificate of compliance for 15 Trinity Cove, map 1, parcel E1-3, for an existing concrete retaining wall and fiber rolls, and a request for certificate of compliance for 15 Trinity Cove, map 1, parcel E1-3, for an existing pier, ramp, and float.
So for both, I'm recommending certs of compliance. They're really old. The property is in the transferring. The concrete wall and fiber rolls, the fiber rolls were installed but never maintained, so the river took them a long time ago. If the new owner wishes to do any work, they would require a new permit. So I would recommend a cert of compliance for that one. And for the pier, ramp, and float, they remain in the permitted location. It's nice to see after all these years. And I'd recommend cert of compliance for that one too.
Okay, any discussion?
None.
Nope.
I had nothing.
I'll make a motion that we Issue a certificate of compliance for 15 Trinity Cove, map 1, parcel E1-3, SC 32-1374. Also 15 Trinity Cove, map 1, parcel E13, SC 320907. No, 32-907.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. And finally, a certificate of compliance request for 3 Mark Lane, map 30, parcel G5-3 for construction of a single-family home.
So it's in substantial compliance. The IA system was installed, is raised and reinforced with a retaining wall. The retaining wall was not on the original plan. It's low, maybe 18 inches, and I think it's something that we would have approved. My guess is when they did the test holes for this, they found really low groundwater because that was during a drought period, and now that they constructed, the water tables are a little bit more average. So they ended up having to do a bit of a raised system there where they probably weren't thinking they were gonna have to. They did, the gutters, downspouts go into dry wells, and the grass looks good. No use of fertilizers or chemicals is evident. And they have their single rail, split rail fence demarcating the no-mow zone going forward. So recommend a cert of compliance with ongoing conditions of, no fertilizer and chemical usage for 3 Mark Lane.
Discussion?
None here.
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none.
I'll move that we approve the certificate of compliance for 3 Mark Lane, map 30, parcel G5-3, SE 32-2508 for construction of a single-family home.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0. Okay.
Sorry, are we supposed to do both of these?
Both of them.
Okay, then.
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
Send
I
it
can
back.
only sign one, too.
well, this one.
Ruh-roh.
Um,
Be back up here tomorrow doing it.
So the next item is reorganization of the board for discussion and possible vote.
The violation first?
Oh, I'm looking at the, sorry.
Just says Mr. Madden is online. If we don't, if we could do
okay.
that first, that would be great.
It's not on the copy of the agenda. I'm
Uh-oh.
looking at, which is what was on Dropbox. But that's all right, it's probably in,
It's on my site summaries.
yeah, okay. All right, so let me call that out, hang on. This is the first item under discussion and possible vote is violation at 0 Lake Street, map 25, parcel L3, by the owner of 2 Ocean Street.
Yep, so the owner, Mr. Madden of 2 Ocean is online today and has been very responsive since I've contacted him in regards to the violation. I'll go through it really quickly and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Madden. It became known to us that a path, a more substantial path than what had been there had been created, which on town property, and solar lights installed heading down towards Skinnequit Pond. The land is on town land, and it's also, the majority of it's within 50 feet of a wetland at the base of that hillside, even if you're not in the pond, is low-lying wet area. There is a public path, not just very close by for people to use. So what I did do is I did issue fines, and also suggested that I be recommending to you to replant the path a little bit. But I guess for now, I'll leave it, I'll let Mr. Madden have a say.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me at least share context on it, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I appreciate the chance to do it virtually. As Amy said, I guess it was probably about 10 weeks ago or so, I had tried to flatten a pathway where my kids and my nieces and nephews have for years physically walked down towards the pond from the side of our property at Two Ocean with a canoe or with a kayak or paddleboard or what have you. And as Amy indicated, there is a public access path on the opposite side of the dead end where our house sits. So it's not like it's far away. It's just, I think over the years, my kids just took the most direct route down to the water, in part because especially the canoe, it's 15 feet long, and navigating through the walkway on the other side of the public access way, there's 3 large pines that are triangled, and it's tricky getting around there. Not a good excuse whatsoever. I'm at least explaining to you why they took the more direct route to the water a lot of times, and they have to bring that back after use every time. And so because where that natural sort of worn pathway was has a slant, steep grade to it just from the natural role of topography of that area. My kids were just, it was a little bit tricky the way they would descend down there. So I took a handheld kind of thatcher thing that I was using on my lawn to just kind of aerate and put some new soil down. It's handheld and rolled it over to loosen up some of that soil and kind of just rake it out in a flat area where that steepest incline was. So I'm explaining to you what I did. I know in hindsight that it's not my property. It was wrong, and I do apologize. And I'm very willing and eager to go with who's ever supervision and restore it back to its slant, put the dirt or sand is still there, so I can rake it right back into its sort of close to natural state, and then figure out exactly what sand, grass, or whatever needs to be planted, so it goes right back to where it was, hopefully in a short amount of time. The lights I put there for the same sort of safety reason. They're plastic, solar, tiny little things that have a point at the end of it. You just stick them in, and we've got them all over our plantings around the perimeter of our house, and so we just had extra ones, and I put them there again so that when my kids were coming up from the pond, especially like nearer to sunset, they could kind of see the pathway. When Amy had contacted me and we spoke by phone, the next time I was back down there, which was about 5 days later, I removed all of those. Again, I was wrong for doing that. It's not my property. And I apologize for that as well. So that's, that, and like I said, I removed those lights and I sent a picture to Amy so she could see that. So yeah, so that's my story. As Amy pointed out, there are 2 $300 fines for 2 specific violations. And I understand the point of those. I was going to ask if you would consider potentially waiving those, giving me a warning. I've been there for 11 years. I've never had any other incidents there. Not that that's justification, but I have been the person that has raked that little small area down by the public access way. It's available for anybody who wants to use it, but I try to keep it clean enough so that people can walk in and launch their what have yous, water toys and stuff. And I have in years past trimmed just a little bit of the vegetation that spills into that little narrow walkway so that people can see the entrance from the road. So anyway, I've kind of taken it upon myself to be a little bit of just I don't know what the right word is, clean, keeping that entranceway to the water a little bit free of mucky leaves and stuff, just by raking it out. So anyway, I'll shut up and let you guys respond.
Thank you. Anything further from you, Amy?
I would just say that I would recommend not just raking the path back to what it was, maybe not doing that if it's more stable, to be honest, than it is now, because there's not a whole lot of earthwork that was done. But planting that center line of the path, I understand there was a social trail that your family had made prior. I mean, we do try to dissuade even social trails, especially when there's public access very readily available right there. So not just grasses there, I would envision something like sweet pepperbush, highbush blueberry, sheep laurel, and viburnum, which I could meet with you at a date to discuss how many and where. But the center line of the path, which is couple feet wide, so if you planted them down the center line, it would, and then probably just seed with a native grass mix to help the ground covers establish. I think that would accomplish reestablishing or revegetating the town's buffer strip there. And I'd like to see that done this fall, so.
I would agree with Amy's offering. I'm fine with waiving the fees in lieu of that work to revegetate it as Amy sees fit.
Okay, Mark?
Go ahead.
I have a question. Just so I understand this correctly, the issue is the work to the path or the fact that the path developed over time?
So there was, they had created a random footpath down over the years. This path was widened, and which we didn't really know about, widened and improved, flattened, and lined with solar lights, creating a more formal pathway down. So what I had sent violation for was alteration of vegetation and path widening, as well as lighting it, which I could see removing that $300 fine, but not the other. So we don't ever prevent people from walking in the woods on town property. We do try to dissuade, if it's walking trails on the property, we try to just keep people from making their own social trails when possible from properties. But had this just stayed like a social trail and not been improved, probably wouldn't have been a big deal. But it was, I think I gave you a copy of the letter and a picture in your packet on the table today.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice the picture.
It's not in the letter. I'll show you. I think I still have it on my phone.
So, just, excuse me, but just on your question, Amy, there was vegetation removed. Is that correct or not? I mean, there was some minor regrading, but was there also vegetation removed?
There was,
Shrubs cut, or?
to be honest, I could not tell if there were shrubs removed. Ground covers, yes.
Ground covers like,
I can tell you at
Yeah,
least.
you sent me a
I cannot
photo.
remove any
Yeah.
shrubs.
I'm sorry, I missed what you just said.
I'm sorry, I said that I did not remove any shrubs. I used a handheld, I think it's called like a tiller, non-powered, just handheld to break into the soil to loosen it so I could rake some of it off to the side to flatten it out. Was there vegetation there? There wasn't. I mean, there was like sand grass. Like, Amy, I sent that picture,
Yeah, you
that
sent
follow-up
it, and
picture too.
yeah.
It's just so you could see what, it's my estimation, what that area that I graded looked like beforehand.
Right, correct. I did not see, when I went down there, any cut stumps or maybe an old tree, like on the side of the path, an old tree that somebody had cut a long time ago, but nothing substantial in the path area. And what you did show me, which I don't have here, but what he had showed me was pretty much just grasses, and he literally had a little tiny dirt track where people had worn it down the center with their feet, but it wasn't wide like this. So,
Wayne,
Nothing.
but I think we try to dissuade social trails,
right.
especially in sensitive areas on our property, so. I think replanting the center line would accomplish.
Okay. I don't have anything myself to say. Someone could make a motion.
So he has asked for you to reconsider fines. That is up to you. It seems like you're in agreement with letting Mr. Madden work with me to come up with a plan for replanting that area. But the question is still outstanding about the fines.
Anyone care to chime in on fines question?
Seems, just the installation of solar lanterns that they just stick in the ground and you
Yeah.
pull them up, right? I don't see that as any kind of issue. I would recommend eliminating that fine.
The 300, yeah.
I would
Mhm.
agree with that.
All right.
Can I ask a question? Would he be responsible for making sure the shrubs live?
We would put that in the conditions, that they would need to be watered on occasion. Whether you have neighbors or other folks around. We're gonna try to pick plants that are gonna be suitable there, but in the, if you get 2 weeks straight of no rain, they're gonna need water. So,
I would guess, like, if I can weigh in on that part to whatever's most drought tolerant and maybe fewer shrubs and more of like an eco grass mix so that
Yep.
it's sort of what was.
I'd happily
Easy.
ask you, maybe we could do a site visit. Okay,
Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
so I would suggest a motion for an enforcement order just to make sure this work gets done this fall.
Well,
I'll make a motion for an enforcement order at, I guess it's 0 Lake Street, map 25, parcel L3. And eliminate the $300 fine for the solar lanterns, but retain the $300 fine for clearing the path. And also to work with Amy and Sophia as to the types of bushes to replant in the pathway.
I'll second that.
further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's 4-0. Okay.
Yep. We'll be in touch,
Okay.
Mr. Madden.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Okay. So, now it's
Reorg.
reorganization of the board.
What is that all about?
Well, this
Every
is-
year, you're supposed to do it in July. We forgot
Oh,
to
is
do
that right?
it.
Okay.
We were too desperate to get out of here on July 3rd.
Yeah, you don't have to, like, you can keep the same folks, but you need to revote every year.
I gotcha. Well, I'll make a motion or no, not motion, nomination, John as chairman.
Second.
John, do you accept the nomination?
Accept the nomination. All those in favor?
Aye.
We need a vice.
Yeah, we need a vice, so, we do need,
I'll make a nomination of Mark Coleman as vice chairman. of the Harwich
Look at his face.
Conservation Commission.
I'll second it.
All those,
Do you accept?
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
sound so excited.
All
It's a
those in
great
favor?
aye.
Aye.
Is that 4-0?
I'll abstain.
Okay.
Do you really want to abstain on yourself?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So there's minutes, and you also were
Oh,
talking
that's
about,
right. We have minutes.
discussion about,
I just wanted to update you a little bit about that, and we can certainly do you want to do the minutes first, or you want to talk fertilizer for a minute?
Guys, will get rid of the minutes.
Lily, our new assistant agent, has been banging out the minutes, so I'm sure she did a wonderful job.
have we all read them in detail.
I have not.
I have not either.
Yeah, well, I managed to read the first one, and I really like her style. It's,
I'll let her know, and she'll hear it anyways. She's gonna review this tape.
okay, but it's, yeah, right, because she's gonna do another set of minutes, right?
Yeah, if you wanna table them to next meeting, that's fine.
I hate to do that,
I
though,
know.
but
But if we haven't read them, yeah, and
Yeah.
I will admit I have not gone through them either.
well, I more or less reviewed the first one, but let's wait. We'll do 4 next time.
Now we're cooking.
Mm-hmm,
Sounds good.
okay. So fertilizer education. Just so that you know, a year, maybe about a year and a half, probably about a year and a half ago, there was kind of an informal committee of 3 department heads told to help educate the public on better yard management practices. I was one of the ones nominated, and then, but my piece was basically on what other plants can you use to achieve what you're looking to achieve in your yard. Different grass mixes, some even actually new alternatives to sod that are coming out that don't require, that establish well and don't require much, as well as, of course, native perennials, shrubs and trees and whatnot. But in addition to that, the health director at the time, Dr. Katie O'Neill, and Sean Fernandez of the golf course were appointed to that. Since then, Katie has left. Our new health agent, or health director, Carrie Scherner, is wonderful, and I know she wants to tackle this issue going forward as well. Trying to educate the public more. As you know, the town, at town meeting, did not support the citizen petition to ban fertilizers, primarily because I think it was a process that a lot of people had an issue with. But what we took from, so the town's stance is to better educate people and not. So I'm in a tricky position because the town's position, I work for the town, is to educate people, and in the commission, we prohibit it in our zone, which nobody disagrees with on the town side, that we should be prohibiting it in the most environmentally sensitive areas. They just don't want to make it townwide. We did come up with a website, or a section of the health department website, about education for people about proper practices. It is proper practices if you are to fertilize and use things like that, but I also have a section on other plant materials and other ways that you can amend soils and whatnot. So we're trying. We need to get back up and running on that, and we need to have more meetings on that. So I do believe education is very worthwhile. I also do think we should consider something like putting a condition, as long as we make it standard going forward on projects, because there's no way right now, we put that condition of no fertilizers and chemicals, and 1 out of 20 people maybe follow it. And we don't have the ability to police it. I want to say, now that we're getting more up to staff, I have another person starting soon, that hopefully will have more time, but I don't want to be the fertilizer police either. When I'm out at a site is when, looking at something else is when I notice it. I don't think putting a condition that prior to we approve your project, but prior to it starting, we just need a statement from the owner and landscaper saying that we understand that we cannot, that we are prohibited from doing this. And I would work with them to find other ways to achieve their landscape goals. I think putting the onus a little bit on them is not necessarily a bad thing. That's just me.
Something that happens in other towns, and we may see that here, is in Brewster and Orleans anyway, that there are pond coalitions there who are doing this pond pledge thing where people publicly pledge not, to take proper care of their properties. And that's sort of a different form of education coming from the public as opposed to from the town.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any direct way to incorporate that, but there is a Harwich Pond Coalition being formed right now, and that is certainly on the people forming that are also talking about that kind of a bond pledge. I don't think that should take our eye off the ball at all, but I think that's another bit of public education, and there should be an interplay between the town and the Pond Coalition about these things, cooperation, and coming to some agreement about what makes sense, or at least conversation.
I think that some version of an agreement or a statement is a good idea, only because having been on the service side of this, like in projects, like we see the homeowner's never gonna read this stuff.
Right.
And then the construction guys, or not the guys, even if it's a landscape company, the maintenance manager is not who's here. The maintenance manager isn't reading this stuff. The maintenance manager is not, like, it's like all of these projects are kind of pieced together. So there's no, like, the finished project to, like, when somebody comes on and, you know, is starting to talk about lawn care with the client. The client hasn't seen or read this, and then that account manager also has not seen or read this. So I think that there is something to be said for, like, bringing it to somebody's attention, because I think there's probably a significant amount of, like, it's just paperwork being filed and boxes being checked, and that's it. And again, I know I got myself into trouble the other day for saying this, but, like, on a road, like wherever that Fiddlers, if you're the one person, like, everybody's houses look the same, right? You're gonna upkeep them the same. Their landscapers are doing this, and your landscaper does this. So it's like, it's a little bit of a, you know, we're having this conversation now, and we want to start to, like, interrupt those things and say, hey, like, because you live right on the water, like, your lawn actually shouldn't be fertilized, you know? And I mean, I don't want a fertilizer police. I think that sounds like a nightmare. And I mean, professionally, it's confusing for me, because I also think that organic fertilizer can be applied properly without leaching into the waterways. And so I'm not,
Yeah.
so anyway, go ahead.
Well, I sort of agree with you, but how does anybody know? And the vast majority of that industry aren't thinking about proper application, right?
It's a total industry problem. I
Yeah.
agree, but I also, as a professional who cares very much about doing my job properly and also meeting the client's needs, like, I am very thoughtful about that, and I find it kind of offensive if people are gonna say, no, Sophia, you can't do that because everybody else does a bad job. I realize it's complicated.
Right, which is why we're where we are. It's complicated, and there are arguments for or against all of it because it's complicated. And, I mean, in a place like Fiddler's Landing, where, or there are lots of other places, no particular reason to pick that out except we were there. If someone makes an example of themselves, if someone has a sign out front saying, you know, I'm doing this with my property because I think it's the right thing to do, and this is how they're doing it, and if it can be done in a way where their property looks great to
Yeah.
passersby, then that's a great thing, and we should be looking for ways to make something like that happen.
Agreed.
Not that it's easy,
Yeah,
but someone like you who cares, and maybe we get hired by somebody along in some place like that, and you can suggest that to them, but
I'd love that. I mean, and things are changing, and that's why
Yeah.
we're seeing more people do this, but I do think there's a visibility problem with people just not knowing what is going on, and, you know, oh, I do live, like, right on a cliff that falls into the ocean, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
right in this marsh, and I can't do the same things that I would do if I lived, you know, somewhere else, somewhere farther away, so.
A big part is lately, especially this summer in particular, of my day, has been educating people that natives and that can be beautiful as well. And, you know, they're used to it, people are used to a very specific aesthetic. And that's what they want, because they just don't know, to a certain extent. Sometimes they do know, but I do feel like things are changing a little bit, and people are a little bit more receptive. But it takes time, and it takes education of both homeowners and landscapers to do it, so, sorry if I interrupted.
Education seems to be the key here. Bottom line is, how would we go about doing that as a commission or as a town? Having flyers
I've
printed
got-
up and mail, and put it in the, maybe the water bills or something, like they put things like that in there all the time.
Mhm.
And
I think there's a much more practical way to do it, and perhaps some consideration would be given to repetitive emails. I mean, their email addresses are available throughout town records and so forth for the most part. If there was,
I don't know if there's like easily pulled out like all the waterfront people, you know, I don't know. how
well, I
they-
think it would take some legwork to put together
Yeah,
the mass
the word
mailing, if you
discrimination
will.
rears its ugly head when you start doing stuff like that.
Well,
Start segregating
we've tried to
certain
do
peoples.
like a workshop, I got one attendee, we put it out, like we try to use social media to our advantage. We now have gotten permission, I don't have one yet, and I don't want one, but a town, you know, Facebook page, certain town departments have Facebook pages, and that tends to reach the masses. I piggyback on others, because I don't want to deal with that. But,
Well, something to think about.
Yeah, so think about it.
How we can get the information to the people,
the,
Yeah.
train them or teach them or whatever you wanna call it.
the website that you had mentioned earlier with the group you're working with,
Mm.
Is that active or is that just in process?
It's, it was up, let me check. It was through the health department, like their helpful resources page, and
Okay.
most of us have links to helpful resources, like my links to,
I hadn't noticed it,
Yeah.
that's why I was asking.
I will check, I will
but
check.
My thought earlier when we were talking, and it's not that I disagree with you, John, but the method of starting with one individual, obviously you gotta start somewhere,
Let's start somewhere, yeah.
but to pick this particular guy at this particular moment, I don't know, I just don't think it's,
Well, which guy are we gonna pick then?
oh, I
Who's
don't know.
willing?
We do have to start somewhere.
We do have to start somewhere, but I think there's a better method, that's all.
And what is that?
Well, I think that's what we're talking about. So,
Yeah, this is a different thing from public education, and I agree with public education, but, and we're not really in a position to do the broader public education, that's not really our role here. I mean, we can talk about it, and we can propose some things, but we have some very direct ways of making an impression on people.
okay, then if we're gonna do that, then make it standard throughout.
Absolutely
I
agree
think,
with you.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
then you're talking bylaw.
No, not
Yeah,
necessarily.
Then it's a town bylaw that you can't use fertilizer, and that ran into a big problem last
No,
year.
we're not talking about, all we're talking about is in making sure that the actual property owner and the service people who are working on their yard understand that they are prohibited from applying fertilizers and pesticides. That's already in the town bylaws.
I think it's
and
in, yeah, it's in the regs.
Would
I
it
have to
be
check
more
it.
appropriate to incorporate the detail of the communication you spoke of in the boilerplate part of the order of conditions rather than a special condition? Let
See,
it
I
be a
find that
standard item?
people honestly don't read the generals, and they're more apt to read the special conditions that relate specifically to their project.
All the other things.
Maybe it needs to be prepared and submitted before they receive it.
Yeah,
What do you mean by that?
If they're gonna receive an order of conditions, once it's issued,
Mm.
then they need to come and pick it up, but they need to have that document prepared that they acknowledge that particular line item.
I was just gonna say, prior to work starting, that they have to submit that, like, at their start work, we usually have start work meetings pretty much for all the projects.
Mhm.
You have to turn it in then.
Mhm.
So, sorry, Mark.
If you did a
Who are
letter.
you picturing agreeing?
Whoever's gonna be responsible for the order of conditions.
Yeah,
Mm.
see, but I feel like for projects, like, that could be just a project manager from the construction company.
Mhm. You're right.
Yeah, and he'll have nothing to do with how the lawn gets fertilized or whatever. So it's like, it's just a moot point. My point is that, I think that the information isn't getting into the right people, and how do we make that happen?
Something to think about, that's for sure.
Some
No,
things to
no way you can
stew
do this.
over. I have an exciting announcement, if we're done with this topic for tonight.
Sure.
Our Herring River study, so it's, the field work, I believe, is completed. We're gonna be waiting for report in October. TRC Companies has asked that they be allowed to present our project at a national conference in DC in October.
Oh, you all
And,
going down?
Yeah.
Oh, I've asked if I can, and I was told by administration that I could, but I haven't gotten the registration taken care of yet. Why am I blanking on the North American Estuarine Conference?
Yeah?
And I talked to John about it, just to make sure it was okay that we allow this. And we both agreed that what better way to get great peer review for our project. We don't know what the results are yet, and neither do they, but they think regardless of the results, this is one of the first studies of its kind, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah?
That's why they haven't found, so there's a reason for that too. This is one of the first studies of its kind to actually address this issue, and I would love, I think it's great that we're gonna get some
Cover Rolling Stone?
peer review. Yeah, but, so,
Yeah, that's
let you
pretty
know,
cool.
they,
So can we request that they present whatever it is they're gonna present down there?
yes,
to
us.
us?
Well, their contract says that they have to do 1 to 2 public presentations, so.
In town?
Yes,
That doesn't
in
include
town, it
what
does
they're
not,
doing in
no,
DC. Right.
no. I was like, maybe I'll take a little vacation, and it's a whole week-long conference, I don't wanna go for the
Oh,
whole
my
week,
goodness.
but I'll go for like 2 days.
There you go.
Spend another couple days in DC, haven't been there in a while. So I'm hoping the town will assist in that.
Well, I think it'd be very interesting to hear the results of the study. I mean,
Oh,
And I also I would love to go
I'm a supporter of
to
it.
see what other people are doing throughout the country, and what other, yeah.
So to hear what other people have to say in the conference about
Yeah.
that study.
Yeah.
'Cause it's public presentations, and is it an actual paper that is a presentation, or is it like a poster saying?
They don't know yet what it's whatever they get accepted to do,
I see.
they've submitted. They haven't heard definitively yet if they got in, but they think they have a very good chance because this is unique.
Well, that's interesting,
Yeah,
exciting.
kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's great.
Little old Harwich is on the map.
I know.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Anything else? Yes.
Just, I'm circling back for 2 seconds, only because I'm afraid next time we have here or whatever, that somebody's gonna say, what about, like.
Yeah.
So, should we have another conversation in a little while? Should we, how do we resolve,
So this,
kick the can for a couple months and?
no, I
I
mean,
don't
I
know.
can draft a potential letter that we could consider for to make as part of the orders of conditions. I see it as a condition of the project, that if you're gonna do this, this is part of the condition, is to agree to this.
So,
Whether it has any teeth or not, but at least the people, the owner and somebody from the landscaping company is signing that they at least saw this.
Yeah.
You know, whether they abide by it is a whole
Right.
other thing, but at
Absolutely.
least we know somebody acknowledged it.
Yeah, you just gotta rely on the people doing the right thing.
Right.
And then when they do the wrong things, we can be like, can't say you didn't know.
Yeah.
There's two ways of doing this. One is just require them to write a letter. The other is to give them a form letter that they just have to sign.
I prefer the latter to make it easier,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I could draft one, a real simple one.
I think that would be appropriate.
Well, okay then. I'll make a motion.
Amy?
We adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
I